Oh, no, I hadn't even thought of that. God, I'm clever. God, I'm so clever. My mom was right.
All those teachers, those Montessori schools.
Come on and visit for any occasion. Don't keep patting down waiting. Comics and conversation. Keep the conversation moving along. Keep reading comics, keep your local store strong. If it's hard, then it's a job for the challengers. Comics and conversation, y'all.
From Challengers Comics and Conversation in Chicago, this is Contest of Challengers. And now, here are Patrick Brower and W. Dal Bush.
So, Dal.
Patrick.
How has been your passage of time this week?
It's been constant. I think constant is where I want to land on that.
Yeah?
Yeah, I don't feel like it's been... Like, the days haven't necessarily been longer or shorter. They just kind of keep going.
Does it feel like it's been a week since we've recorded last?
No, it feels like it's been a million years.
Well, that was a trick question. It's actually been a week and a day.
Oh.
We have fallen off of our normal schedule.
Yeah, like everybody else in America, and probably all over the world, schedules are kind of a theoretical construct, not anything that actually interacts with our daily lives. There have definitely been a few days over the last week or so.
Let's just use week as a term that represents a specified amount of time, whether or not we can acknowledge how much time is in that.
Yeah, I'd frequently forget kind of what day it is because I don't have any structure to my life anymore. There aren't... Like, for you and I, so much of our professional life is built around recurring tasks. This happens every Tuesday. This happens every Wednesday. This happens every Friday. This happens every Monday. And within that, we've got a number of tasks that we do to kind of keep our day structured. So we're breaking our day down into units, and then we're breaking our week down into units thereof. Those don't exist anymore. So a lot of what we're doing is like, I'll go into the store for a few hours, and then when the tasks are done that I have for the day that have been put together over the night, then I just leave. Like, there's not a thing of, like, filling days anymore.
Had you felt, before this happened, that your life was too much of a routine? Were there times when you'd be like, man, every day I got these things to do? Did you at all hope there was some way to change it up?
No, I love routines.
Because I was going to say, if you did, this is all your fault.
Yeah, no, I love routines. I need to kind of structure my life.
You really do.
In a pretty constant way. Like, even within, like, the kind of, upheaval of the outbreak and the pandemic and self-isolation and quarantine, there's things where it's like, no, I still need to go to Chipotle Thursdays and Sundays. Or I need to eat Chipotle Thursdays or Sundays. I can't really go inside the restaurant anymore. So I'll need to... either be there to pick up something outside or to get it delivered. And it's tricky because I get the chicken quesadillas, which is not a menu item, which means when you're ordering them online through their app, you can't order a chicken quesadilla. You've got to order a burrito with only chicken and cheese, place the order, and then call the restaurant within a few minutes of placing your order before they've made it to go, by the way, can I get those to be quesadillas? There's no... like notes field where you can say like, please make these quesadillas.
Yeah.
I don't know that they would ever just make a chicken and cheese burrito, but I can't chance it.
I'm sure they would. I 100% think that they would.
That's super weird. I mean, there's not enough there. Like, you couldn't even roll it up. It would be like what would it look like? It would look like one of those...
Like a quesadilla.
No, I was going to say like...
Like a small taco. A pierogi.
Yeah, like a taquerito or something where it's just this like little like cigar-shaped thing.
Maybe the person making it would think, and this is really comic related, that the person just wants extra chicken and extra cheese to like fill that up.
This regular shaped burrito, but it's just chicken and cheese. That's insane. I don't think they would scoop that much of anything.
You should try it next time.
I don't want to try it. It's too risky. That's the thing. Like, if they get it wrong, then it's like, what is it? Half an hour before I can get another one? Like, and then I gotta rebuy it?
I guess good news for you.
What's
you
up?
Have a new routine added to your routine.
I do. I am, like a lot of people, there's little things that we do in our lives that I'm very much looking forward to being able to get back to. Like, the things that we sort of took for granted, the idea of, I can just go into Chipotle and then order my food and eat it. Like, that's not a thing that we get to do anymore.
Or when you watch AEW Dynamite, there's a reaction from the crowd.
Yeah, just crowd noise in general.
Yeah.
All of those little things. I can't imagine what the WrestleMania that's airing this weekend is going to be like.
Empty. Quiet. Although Kevin Owens did say that they all gave their all.
I believe they did. I think much like comics retailers right now, the professional wrestlers are doing their best with a bad situation and trying to, deliver for the people who support them as much as they possibly can. Do you like how I did that transition, Patrick?
I do, and it's a good segue. It's just not where I plan to go to next.
Oops.
I figured we'd start...
Were we not going to talk about comics industry business on the Comics Industry Business podcast?
Well, sure, but I thought you were specifically going to talk about the orders we've been taking and how the customers have been...
No, I was just bringing it back around to comics.
I appreciate that. I was going to start with what I feel is the biggest news from this week.
What's that?
That is the Marvel news.
What was the Marvel news?
It came out on... what day is today? I guess Thursday?
Today's Saturday.
It came out on Thursday.
Okay.
They are...
Oh, yes. No, I did, yeah.
Slowing production.
I almost feel like we should go chronologically because, like, everything with the coronavirus, it's like something happens and the next day something else happens and everything else happens beyond that.
Okay, well, we can do that. That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. That is big news, and there's an element of that I want to talk about for sure. But yeah, so I think the last time we recorded, I think we were in the midst of there are no new books.
Correct.
Which is a thing that I felt like we did a good job of getting across to people through our mailing list, through our website, through social media, and yet we still get people emailing almost every day like, were there no new books this week? There were no new books this week. There's no new books any week. We don't know when it's going to start back up again. Believe me, if there's anything in the world that we want to do, it's get information to people when books start back up again. As much as people have been surprised that there aren't new books, we want no one to be surprised that there are new books. When we know, you'll know, for sure.
Which do you prefer in an ideal scenario? There's 3 choices.
Okay.
1, new books start coming out before we're open. 2, we open and then eventually new books come out. 3, simultaneous.
Oh, I think 3 is asking a whole lot. That's everything lining up for us, and frankly, that's not what happens. I would prefer us to have books before we're open, if that's possible, with the caveat of I would want extended billing terms from Diamond. I think almost every store is going to have trouble paying for books within 7 days of receiving books, especially if they're not open. So, obviously some stores have net 30 terms. Some stores are COD. Like, they pay for their books when they pick them up or when UPS drops them off long before they get a chance to sell them. So I'd like to see for everybody at least net 30 terms for the foreseeable future, just to give a little bit more flexibility for retailers to sell the products that they're getting, to not have to worry about shutting down because they can't pay for books in immediately or 7 days or 14 days. So if that's the case, then yeah, I'd want us to get books because I think there's an element of, a customer base that we can still service right now. It's just not 100% of what we would order. Like, correct. That's the thing. Like, the returnability that a lot of publishers were planning on, not Marvel, of course, would be super helpful. The ability to basically say, okay, the rack copies that we'd ordered, obviously we can't sell because the rack customers are not going to be able to get to our store. So being able to send all of those back, since we can't necessarily cut our numbers at this point, that's necessary. But yeah, the deferred billing or the extended billing terms, I think is super duper important going forward. But yeah, I'd be okay getting some amount of product that we could, ship out or deliver or whatever. I think that's got possibilities to it. Certainly turning everything off for a month is maybe more than anyone anticipated.
Yeah.
I think when Diamond switched it off, the hope was like a couple weeks, and that could still be what they do. But in general, like, we're looking at a landscape where...
I mean, it's 6 weeks.
I mean, we can't even open to the public
minimum
until May 1st.
Yeah.
And that's... I'm moving target.
And then we can't even see Black Widow that night.
It's true. Not until November now. So yeah, I kind of the last thing I would want is to be open and not have new books, because I think that's going to be boring.
But we
real
do.
boring.
Everything that's on the new wall is still
We do.
new.
That's true.
People haven't seen it yet.
They really haven't. We got a lot of copies of Hellions #1. I hope people are still going to want to read that in a month.
Did you like it?
I did. I don't like Steven Segovia's art. He's one of my least favorite artists.
Yeah, I think his cover is worse than the inside.
Yeah, he's gotten a little better as an interior artist, but in general, he's not a guy I like looking at his drawings. But I like the comic.
I've been anxiously, I was going to say awaiting, but he's back. I've been excited for the return of Zeb Wells to comics.
Yeah, doing a lot of
he's
comics
currently
now,
doing Ant-Man right now.
which is great.
Right?
It's so good.
And
All of the Pamela the Ant recap stuff on the recap page kills me. I love how passive aggressive she is. I love how she's just like somebody who let Scott Lang move into her place and didn't think he'd be there as long as he has, and she kind of can't deal with him. But she's an ant. It's really good. Yeah, the Ant-Man book is real good. I like the artwork a lot too. I think it's a 5-issue series. I think it's one I'll probably end up picking up in a collection.
oh, nice.
I like it as a thing. The Black Cat Spider-Man issue was just really fun and super clever. Anyway, I'm sorry, we got a little bit off track.
Oh, that's fine. No, how dare you talk about comics?
Ant-Man, it's real good. Hellions. I liked it. I did. It's been a little while since I read it, I think.
I like the concept.
Yeah.
I like how the cast is formed.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted it to be a little bit funnier.
Yeah, it's definitely a little bit darker. Like, the characters they're choosing, it's not like the goofy screw-ups. It's like, no, these are the killers. These are the ones where they are largely irredeemable. So putting them in a group and giving Mr. Sinister oversight is like, what's the worst that can happen? I like what they're doing with Havoc, though. I think it's what they're doing with him in Hellions is a nice outgrowth of his Axis storyline and the Uncanny Avengers stuff that came after that, but also a lot of the Astonishing X-Men stuff that Matt Rosenberg was doing with him.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like this is kind of those two concepts, the kind of Astonishing X-Men goofy Booster Gold thing, but then the Uncanny Avengers Booster Gold from Heroes in Crisis thing, where they're just kind of, now they're melding those together, and it's like, who's that guy now?
We're going to find out in those pages.
Yeah, I dug it, and it's a fun mix of characters.
Okay, so we've established that there are no new comics for
Correct.
the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what the next thing that happened was.
Is it the Diamond announcement?
So one of the things we're talking about, not yet, I think.
Okay.
I'm not. One of the two things happened first, but one of the big things that happened was that we were still talking about the idea that it was unclear at that time if companies like Marvel and DC would continue publishing digital comics, while print comics were being held by Diamond and not being distributed. At the time, the rumor was Marvel was going to go ahead with it, but then what we quickly found out was, no, DC's going to go ahead with it. Marvel hasn't made an announcement yet. DC didn't really announce it to the public, but they announced to like a retailer Facebook group.
Their retailer Facebook group.
Hey, here's what we're seeing. And the thing was basically that DC saw the digital market and the print market as two different ones, so there's really no reason for DC to stop publishing digital comics if it wasn't going to impact the print market. Also, it allows them to continue to pay their creators. We'd heard from at least one DC creator before that announcement that DC had told everyone, keep working.
This announcement was on their Facebook page, and we can talk about it because it went public, obviously.
Yeah, that's why.
But
I never saw this on Facebook. I saw this on news sites.
But the real meat of the announcement wasn't in the announcement at all. That came in comments later.
I'm sure.
And that is when we found out that, no, they're still going ahead with digital, and they think it's two separate markets.
Yeah. So that was announced. Retailers flipped out. DC and Marvel.
For, can I just say, the only time in this entire crisis.
Yes. Usually retailers are like, wait and see. So DC and Marvel pretty much announced that they would not be publishing digital comics while print comics were not coming out. That's the current plan. Marvel absolutely hedged their bets by saying they will revisit this if situations change. Like, Marvel right now doesn't want that, but depending on how long this goes on for and how long print comics are being held up by Diamond and by comics retailers, they might change their mind. So this is not like a settled thing. This is right now, this week and next week. There's no plans for that. DC managed to announce to release their digital first projects, which is no surprise. It's the Rooster Teeth stuff like Ruby and Genlock, and the new
Freedom
Batman.
Fighters.
Yeah, and the new Batman: The Adventures Continue digital first series, which again, that's all stuff that was normally going to come out in digital before print. So it's not a big deal. It's not competing with a market or anything any more than it ordinarily was. I don't know if this was before or after that, but then Diamond said, hey, by the way, we are not paying any of our vendors because the whole industry is shut down, and we needed to pay our people, which was a pretty huge shock.
I mean, on the surface, if you expect every comic book store is run in a way, and I don't mean every, but I mean a vast majority of them are week to week.
Yeah.
It would only make sense that the main distributor is also week to week.
Yeah, I mean, this stuff kind of trickles up. If we don't have customers coming in, we can't sell our books, and that means we can't pay our bills. The people that we're paying our bills to, if everyone's also not paying bills to them, they're going to run out of operating capital. And it's unclear the exact financial situation. Obviously, Diamond, it's not in their best interest to tell people, here's exactly how much money we've got, and here's where we're sending it to. So some of this is what a lot of businesses are doing right now, which is
prioritizing.
You pay who you have to, and you put off what you can. For a lot of small businesses, that might mean vendors and retail stuff maybe doesn't get paid because those owners are going to need it to pay like their own mortgage for the house they live in, the food for their family, their own utilities. Like, the business can go away, but their home can't go away. So in a way, Diamond's kind of prioritizing that, where they're saying we have to protect the business here instead of the individual vendors that we pay, because the vendors we can pay later, this stuff, if we don't pay it, there won't be any money coming in the future to pay those vendors, and so on and so forth. The other thing is that Diamond's basically in a position where they are kind of too big to fail. Diamond as a company, if they were to go away, it would be catastrophic to a number of publishers and a whole lot of retailers. If Diamond goes away, that is kind of it for single-issue print comics in North America, if not the world. Diamond is the exclusive distributor of single-issue print comics for companies like Marvel, DC, Dark Horse, Image, Dynamite, IDW, Boom, and pretty much everybody else. Every smaller publisher, like, they could distribute other ways, but if you're not in Diamond, you might as well not have a print comic for the most part. And nobody else, seemingly on the planet, is looking to compete with or take up for Diamond if Diamond goes away. As we've seen with Diamond's almost immediate shutdown when the industry had to grind to a halt, there's no money in comics distribution. It's very labor intensive. You're dealing with so much product coming in every week that has to go out in very specific ways all over the world on a weekly basis. It's so constant, and the margins are so thin.
So thin.
So
you could shave with them.
So almost no real book distributor would want to deal with having to pack and ship $3.99 comic books that you can't pack like books because they're so flimsy. And if they show up to a store with creases or tears or any of the normal kind of shelfware stuff you'll see in books that you get from book distributors, retailers are going to send them back. They can't sell them.
I mean, our books that we get from Ingram and used to get from Baker and Taylor, there's damages every time.
Yeah, but the thing is, for most books like that, even for graphic novels, unless it's completely bent, I'm probably going to try and put it on the shelf because most people, they just want to read them. Yeah. But with single-issue comics, a lot of people want to collect them. Even the people who are just reading them want them to be in good condition. They're not going to take something that's got a bunch of, bends and tears in it. So, having to be that precise with something that is also so cheap is not a good formula for a distributor. So Diamond kind of doesn't have competition, and for the foreseeable future won't have competition because the infrastructure you need to build to compete with Diamond, even if they didn't have exclusive contracts with all these different vendors. Why? Why would you throw your money away on that? So
it's like I had a friend who just mail ordered hollow Easter bunnies for her daughters for Easter.
Yeah.
and they came all just wrecked.
Sure.
It's like, what are you going to do?
Yeah. So for Diamond, they're kind of in a position where they can say, look, we're not going to pay you right now. And and everybody's just going to have to take it, in the same way that for stores that wanted to keep carrying single issue comics because in their region, you know, they might not be shut down yet by the government, or they might feel like they can keep serving their market without being unsafe. They have to take it. Like, they can't go to someplace else to get single issue Marvel or DC comics if Diamond doesn't distribute them. If Diamond decides not to, while they're not technically a monopoly, you kind of don't have a choice. So I think Diamond felt maybe safe by being able to say, look, everyone's just going to have to give us time because the market shut down. And that super sucks. It's not good for all the publishers that maybe were depending on money coming in this month to be able to keep paying their people, which means that in turn, a lot of publishers had to tell their staff, stop working. All their freelancers, stop working. There's no money coming in because these books are not going to go out. So yeah, unfortunately, a ton of freelancers this week got told to turn it off. Valiant had done it already. Marvel, I think they're planning on only releasing 2/3 of their product line.
Yes.
I think for May and June.
That's what they said.
Which means that basically, like, at least 1/3 of their people are being told to stop working, and for a couple months. They're not backlogging material, so it's just unfortunately more people that are being furloughed are being told they don't have work that they can get paid for right now.
It's unfortunate, obviously.
Absolutely.
But we'd always wanted the experiment of, what if Marvel reduced their line? Would their sales go up?
Yeah,
it's just, this is obviously not the right conditions for that experiment to be tested.
Who knows, A, who's going to have money to buy comics in May and June, B, who's going to feel comfortable going to stores to do it. The Marvel thing is interesting to me because I don't 100% know what it means as far as announced projects. Is it that stuff is getting pushed off to later? So are we going to see 2/3 as much stuff in May and June, and then suddenly in July we're getting 1 1/3 as much stuff for July and August as they push that material just further out and then start doubling it up? We've seen it before with Marvel where when stuff gets delayed, it's not like everything keeps its same interval. Like, if a book that comes out twice a month is 2 months late, then you start getting every single week until they catch up.
You didn't hear their follow-up announcement?
No.
For July? Every book is weekly.
No.
That's not true. That's not true.
But, I mean, something like that honestly wouldn't surprise me.
It's 2 issues a week.
Like, if they feel like they can get away with it, they would absolutely, like, well, we got to fill that hole somehow. I wonder if it's going to mean that certain books maybe get delayed altogether or just get canceled. I don't know how they're going to do it. I don't know what's on the chop.
Certainly not Werewolf by Night. That's not what you're talking about, I hope.
Right. I need my Power Pack comic. But I wonder if it's things that are maybe not that far along, like a lot of the stuff that were just in the new catalog for June, like some of the Empire tie-ins and stuff, like one-shots. Are they just going to go, forget it? Like, it's not, by the time we release this, it's not going to matter.
Do you think they'll hold off on the 8-issue annual crossover series?
That could be a thing.
Infinity Destinies?
Yeah, they were doing 2 annuals a month for 4 months. They could just go, forget it. I wonder what they are going to do. Like, that's that element of it. I think they said that in the coming weeks they'll announce exactly what the publishing plan is going to be, so retailers and fans will have some idea of what's coming out when.
For every industry right now, everybody wants all the information right now, but it's impossible because you can't make these decisions. The way we can't tell you when we're going to be able to reopen. Right. We hope it's May 1st. Yeah. We don't know for sure. And we don't know if we'll have new comics.
Yeah, when are new comics going to start? I mean, so not April 8th, I can tell you that for sure.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I don't know.
And as you said earlier, we'll do our best to let you know.
Absolutely, yeah. So one of the things that happened when Diamond announced that they weren't paying vendors was there was a lot of speculation, and of course there was, because Diamond is kind of the main vehicle to get comics from publishers to comic shops. And if they are saying, we don't have money right now, it's unclear how much that's going to impact their viability going forward. A lot of companies and a lot of businesses right now that are saying they don't have money. The question is, when does money start coming in again, and how long can they wait to do that? There's only so many people you can furlough and so many people you can lay off before just the physical reality of your business cannot sustain no money coming in. So again, I don't think Diamond's going anywhere. Right up front, don't think Diamond's going anywhere. They're 100% too big to fail. There is no substitute for Diamond unless you completely restructure the market. But a lot of people were like, Diamond's going to go away. And I thought about it for a minute. Just the hypothetical of like, what if Diamond does go away?
This was one of my favorite parts of the week.
Yeah.
With what you came up with. I don't mean like that was a solution, but I mean looking ahead to a post-Diamond Challengers.
So obviously there would be a lot of casualties, unfortunately. In the retail community, there's a lot of stores that depend on single-issue superhero comics, and if those stop coming out in print, they are boned. They have no interest in graphic novels. They don't have a market built for that. They don't have enough customers that would support that. A lot of their readers would just quit. There's a lot of people who collect like Spider-Man comics, and if they stop printing single-issue Spider-Man comics, they would just be done with comic books. They have no interest in digital. They have no interest in graphic novels. So that'd be a bloodbath. A lot of stores would just go away. A lot of fans would completely check out of the industry. The way that a lot of publishers work is the single-issue comic sales subsidize the rest of the business. The kind of... the graphic novels almost can kind of act as royalties, where like the single-issue comics pay for the production of the material, but then when it gets collected, that's the gravy. Getting it to that format allows them to actually make some money off of it. So without the ability for the single-issue comics to pay for the production of the comics, moving just to graphic novels, the financials stop making sense. A lot of books do not make any sense because they don't sell any graphic novels. So that would mean a lot of publishers that depend on single-issue comics would either go away or have to completely restructure the way they produce and distribute comic books. It would be bad for a lot of creators because those creators depend on the kind of breadth of the market that wouldn't necessarily exist anymore. And the financials of how many people the comics industry can employ would change drastically, and that would mean that a lot of people would suddenly find no one to employ them, and that would be bad. So there's a lot of stratas of this where it's just real bad. Like, it would be a catastrophic restructuring of how comics work. However, when I was thinking about it, I'm like, one of the things that bothers us, I think, the most right now, you and I, Patrick, is...
I mean, I just wanted to launch into a series of stupid answers, but I'll let that go.
Is dealing with single-issue
when people call
comics.
And they say, do you... But
every time I answer the phone and someone asks me how I am, I know the next thing they're going to ask is if we buy comics.
Yep.
Those are the only people who, when I answer the phone, ask me how I am. I almost want to say, worse now, but they're just trying to be polite. One of the things that I think we have the most trouble with
we don't buy comics, but you were so nice.
Is dealing with the single-issue comics format. The financials of it frequently don't make sense. It's very easy for a book to quickly become unprofitable based on unsold copies. The speculator market is kind of a nightmare. It takes up a ton of space for something that is, again, you're making a couple bucks a book, maybe. And we have a lot of effort that goes into, and I don't mind this part, but I'll mention there's a lot of effort that goes into maintaining the subscription formats. Pulling subscriber books, emailing subscribers, dealing with all that stuff is a lot of time. So if single issue comics kind of didn't exist anymore, I would be willing, for us at least, to try and restructure towards being basically what we've talked about before, a bookstore that focuses on comic books. Just graphic novels, where you don't have to deal with the collectible aspects of it. You can just have books and people tell stories, and
I mean, it's
you
basically
sell those stories.
sidekicks.
And that was what I thought about, was like, what would Challengers look like? And we've talked before about how Sidekicks is like a smaller version of Challengers, but without single-issue comics, Challengers would be like a bigger version of Sidekicks, where the walls that we have now that are all single-issue comics and stacks up them
face out
would just be face-out graphic novels.
Man.
Where in, like, I was already thinking, like, what we've got 8 4-foot sections, but like you could have rotating displays there where it's like one section, Brian K. Vaughan stuff. Every Brian K. Vaughan graphic novel, face out, stacks of them. Neil Gaiman. Dark superheroes.
It's endless. The
romance,
potential is endless.
Whatever. And then you keep rotating them. Like, here's the structure of it was each month, the 4-foot section shift one over to the left, and the one at the left goes away. The one at the right is brand new. So every 8 months, you're cycling in completely new ones. Every month,
the one at the right is brand new.
Yeah. So
Okay.
they basically move to the left. So they get closer to the front as they get older to kind of freshen them up.
Sure.
And it's that sort of stuff where it's like, oh, you could just do graphic novels. And at that point, I go ahead and if you're Marvel and DC, basically just do digital chapters. Batman comes out digitally, and then every 6 months you put out a new book. Here you go. It's a new graphic novel. We've seen stuff like Saga where if people are into the content enough, they'll just read that.
And they'll wait.
Yeah.
How many times have we thought, okay, people will catch up and read the singles? No, they read it in graphic novel form. That's how they discovered it. That's what it means to them.
They come in every few months and they get a stack of books. And I don't know what the superhero fan base would be like. I don't know if you could move a sizable number of people over from reading Batman every 2 weeks to reading Batman every 3 months. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know if that translates. Some people would. If that was the only way to read Batman in print, they would probably just read the graphic novels. But I don't know how compelling that material is in that format normally, which is why we don't see a lot of sales necessarily for a lot of superhero graphic novels. 1s and 2s for the most part, as opposed to 10s or 20s for image graphic novels. And I mean, I don't know what a company, the publishers who survive, I don't know what their product line looks like. I think the ones that would be the least impacted would be the ones that have a large bookstore and online sales potential. So, like all the kids publishers, like Scholastic.
Oh yeah, they'd be fine.
They'd be fine. They would. I don't think they'd even see a bump necessarily beyond the larger economic impact of the coronavirus outbreak.
When you say bump, you mean dip?
Yeah, I'm sorry, dip. Yeah, they wouldn't see any impact from it beyond larger economic concerns. Like comic shops going away or Diamond going away would be. I'm sure they would notice something, but it wouldn't necessarily change how they commission and release material. They might do 1 or 2 less books a season, but in general, I think they'd probably be fine. Like companies like First Second, Fantagraphics, Drawn and Quarterly, I think they would be fine.
Yeah. Because
I don't know how much of their material they necessarily see through this market. Again, it could be a thing where if you've got 3,000 accounts and a tenth of them are stocking your books, like suddenly saying 300 less copies sold for a book that might only have a print run of 2,000 might not be great. So that again might structure some things. But, I don't know if a company or if a storefront like Quimby's that maybe does a lot in arts-focused graphic novels, I don't think they'd go away. Chicago Comics might. I don't know, maybe not.
I mean, they've got a very sizable back issue clientele, and I think that would still, don't you think back issue stores would still?
So that's the thing. I don't know if they would. I think in general, if the production of single issue comics stopped, I think the back issues would maybe just refocus to very high end collectible stuff, key issues.
Okay.
I don't think you'd get people, because with no new fans necessarily coming into that collecting, I don't know why they would suddenly be like, oh, I was reading X-Men comics digitally, but I didn't know you could buy them in print. I'm going to go get all these old issues of X-Factor. Like, that would become valueless. The stuff that would have value would be the things that would resonate with collectors outside of comics. So, your Avengers 4 and your FF1
sure.
and whatever.
But you don't think that the people that were buying the periodicals would then think, like, well, they don't exist anymore, but there's 80 years worth of comics I haven't read, and there's a lot of them for $1 in these boxes.
I think they'd be done.
Oh, okay.
I mean, that's assuming that shops that focus only on back issues could even survive. Like, I don't know if there's stores that could necessarily continue to operate as they have been, just selling back issues. Like, if they're not graphic novel stores, if they're just selling back issues, and there's no new comics to sell,
Okay.
Yeah.
So that is a potential way to survive
Yeah.
a potential future.
I would be real interested in trying that. Like, I'm sure there's stores that are like, if Diamond goes away and Marvel and DC are like, we can't publish single issue print superhero comics anymore. It's all digital going forward and print collections a few times a year. I think a lot of stores would just pack it in because they don't think they could weather it, or because they're not interested in doing so. For us, I would be kind of excited to try it and see what a new version of comic shops looks like without having to serve the single issue market. Like, we've talked about it before, but in a sense of like, we'd be telling so many people no.
Right.
Like,
but it wouldn't be our decision.
Yeah, it wouldn't matter. We'd just be figuring out what a non-single issue comic shop looks like. And yeah, there was a point where I'm like, oh, that could be real fun. But like, again, there'd be so much blood on my hands, metaphorically. I'm like, I don't know that I could say like, I'm so excited about this, when it's like, oh, 80% of retailers closed up shop and they had sunk their entire life savings into starting a comic shop, and now they have no income, and everyone employed at comic shops is out of business. And, like 70% of freelancers do not have any work. Like, these are things where it's like, I don't know if it would be worth that. That would be maybe too much upheaval for me to feel like I would have survivor's guilt.
Would we immediately have to abandon Comic Suite?
I'd be real interested in seeing what subscriptions look like for stuff like that. Like, currently we don't get a ton of people asking us to pre-order graphic novels because in general you don't have to.
Right.
They don't come out that fast, and they're usually not that hard to get. Obviously, the few limited edition collector's items, things here and there, but there's not a lot of that for graphic novels. In general, like, unless you're super excited about making sure you've got Saga Volume 10 waiting for you, you can usually just come in whenever after it comes out and get it. Like, even if we run out, we can get more in just a few days. Single issue comics, not only do they come out every week and then new installments come out every month, but frequently, if you're not there day of release, they're gone.
Yeah.
So you have to reserve them. There's too much to keep track of to just come in and look at the shelves and hope you remembered everything. Graphic novels? I don't know. Maybe not. I think there'd be a lot less to worry about. I mean, a lot less options available. Like, if Marvel shifted to digital first comics and print collections, I think someone said Marvel published 100 comics in March.
Okay. Let's go with that.
I don't think you get more than, maybe 5 graphic novels a week from Marvel.
5 was my estimation as well.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So it's a thing that over a month, there's only 20 new graphic novels coming out. I don't think you'd see nearly the amount of like variations that you get now, where it's like, oh, there's a bunch of different X-Men comics and Avengers comics. I think there would be the X-Men comic, the Avengers comic. That kind of, that pipe dream pared down superhero lineup that I wanted for decades. I think you'd have to see that because you could not, and again, this is the thing of like, I don't know if you, like, the manga market points to a way of like, you can do installments. People will follow installments. I mean, there's, 90 something installments of One Piece. So that's viable. But I don't know if maybe you'd see superhero publishers in America go the Black Label route, where it's just like, no, we're just going to do a 90 to 200 page graphic novel of a Batman story. And next month there's a different Batman story by a different team. And next month there's a different Batman story, and so on. Instead of, there has to be a new Avengers volume every single quarter. Maybe they don't do that. Maybe they just figure, no, just maybe it's a bigger book or smaller book or whatever.
Yeah. Sky's the limit.
Yeah, I just the way that books are put together, I'd be real interested in seeing what that means. Is it just going to be, would it be 20-page digital comics that then an arc gets collected, or would they look at it in completely different ways? I mean, without the single issue as like the hub that everything spokes out from, what do comics look like from major publishers? That market.
I don't know.
Yeah. I don't think any of this is going to happen. This is something I thought about in the shower one day because, again, things move real fast right now, and one day it's, oh my god, Diamond can't pay their bills, and the next day it's like, nothing's happening. Diamond's not immediately going out of business. Could it happen? I mean, it's possible. There's a lot of stuff
I feel like you're really
shifting around.
You're really tempting fate, and next week we're going to be talking about Diamond announcing their immediate closure.
I mean, look, I don't want that, because, again, just the thing of, like, we talked about, it's good for us that comics are kind of on hiatus because, books coming in that we can't pay for and we can't sell to people is a recipe for the whole retail part of the market to just completely go away, and that would screw everybody up in the same way that Diamond going away would screw everybody up, just in a different way. But even talking about that, it's like, if there's no new books, that means that the people that make the books have no work to do, which means they're not getting paid. And I feel bad because I know a lot of creators, and I don't want them to not get paid. They have families to take care of.
Yeah.
They have themselves to take care of. And I'm currently someone who's barely pulling together enough money to maybe support myself, maybe, through what feels like nonstop hustle. And I don't want that for them. I don't want them to barely subsist by, trying to do sketches for people online or taking commissions or, throwing together whatever they can to piece together the mortgage for the month. And that's the downside of all of these decisions, is that there's nothing where doing it doesn't hurt another segment of the market.
Obviously, we are talking in a world where loans and grants and relief hasn't come yet financially.
No, a lot of options. We applied for a lot of things, but who knows if we'll get any of it.
Yeah.
I hope we do.
I thought there would be word, like, if you don't even get an email that says, hey, you
Did you do the SBA one already? The Small Business Association?
Oh, that was days ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought I saw a thing on my phone that from 23 hours ago where it's like, they're taking applications now, but I guess you already did.
That's the SBA 7, the Paycheck Protection one.
Oh,
That's
okay.
that one.
Oh, okay.
And no, I did not do that.
Okay. Because we don't get paychecks.
Correct. So what else happened this week, Dale?
Golly, what did happen this week?
Oh, I thought you were cleverly leading up to it because you used the word that the single issue is the hub.
Oh, no, I hadn't even thought of that. God, I'm clever. God, I'm so clever. My mom was right.
All those teachers, those Montessori schools.
No, so we tried out Comic Hub, and then Comic Hub became more of a thing in the news this week. I think we talked about it maybe in kind of minor ways. I didn't really want to talk about it until we had a little bit more on it. We had talked about switching over our point of sale system, which is currently Diamond's RMS, RMH, and Comic Suite, to Stu Colson's Comic Hub, which is something we tried out about 4 years ago when Comic Hub was just sort of branching out. It's a point of sale system.
So we talked about this like 2 or 3 weeks ago when we first were dipping our toe back in. Yeah. So people should be aware of what it is.
Sure, I'll just frame it a little bit. Comic Hub is a point of sale system that Stu Colson had created for himself for his store in New Zealand. And it incorporated an in-store point of sale system, a web interface where people could browse his stock and order things, manage their subscriptions online, and an app where people could also manage their subscriptions, add books to their pulls lists, see what's coming out for the next week, and I don't know if it's the next week, but definitely the catalog you could browse and make all your subscription changes from there. He had come out to do a kind of worldwide tour to pitch Comic Hub to a lot of different shops. And he had come to Chicago, and we'd gone to a Peace Pizza and pub or brewery with him, and he pitched us on Comic Hub, and it sounded really good, and we tried it out. It was unfortunately at that point not quite ready for what we needed, so we announced it with a lot of fanfare, and we're really excited about it, and kind of like 24 to 48 hours later had to go, we're not doing that. Stu was very considerate with our concerns, and now, years later, we had decided that one of the things that we really liked was that Comic Hub had this consumer-facing web interface where you could browse an entire store's stock.
Basically, everything we have in the store would be available online in real time.
And also, people could pay for their subscriptions online and manage a lot of the stuff that we were doing by hand through email and through like social media would be more integrated and more handled by Comic Hub. We tried it. Stu was again very considerate in how quickly he got everything going.
With a global pandemic happening.
Yeah, we managed to kind of get. He got us onboarded with Comic Hub in a couple days. It was still not for us, unfortunately. This is.
I think one of the things, if I may jump in,
Yeah.
is that in those 4 years since we initially tried it, a lot of the things we were most excited about it doing, we, and mainly you, found ways to do that.
Yeah, we hacked together some of what Comic Hub was doing through our own procedures. So a lot of the thing, like if we didn't have any sort of, emails or point of sale system or whatever, and Comic Hub was there, the ability to engage our subscribers in a more immediate, constant way would be a huge boon. We were kind of already doing that. So a lot of the tools it was offering were things where it's like, this is incrementally better, not like...
Exceptionally better.
Yeah, it wasn't the word I'm looking for. Exponentially better. Things got slightly better. Each individual component we were dealing with now and tried. I think we tried. I read all the documentation. I definitely tried to get my hands around it. The problem I had with it was that it's very much something that Stu designed for what works well for him. And if you can run your store the way Stu runs his store, you're going to do great with Comic Hub. But if you need to get Comic Hub to run the way that you run your store, it's going to be a problem. And for me, I just felt like there was too much friction, too much of where things that I needed it to do, it wasn't meeting me halfway. It was either I met it all the way or nothing happened. And that was just something where I felt like I was making too many compromises for Comic Hub. And that, for me, it just wasn't fitting. There's plenty of stores that do great with Comic Hub, though. There's stores like Comics Conspiracy and Big Bang that are really, really, really big fans of Comic Hub. They love it, and that's great. It clearly works great for them. Once again, I think Stu 100% believes in his platform and works very, very hard to make it as good as he can. It was just, I did not see what I needed to see in it. The interface was not something that I felt like was transparent enough for me, in that some of the things that I would need to understand about Comic Hub were left largely to PDFs that I felt were a little bit too vague, and an emphasis on crowdsourcing support that I don't feel comfortable with. Some of the Comic Hub stuff was very, go to the Facebook forum, other retailers will help you out, they want to help you out, and it's like, look.
And they do.
They do, but look, I'm a comics retailer, I want to help out other comics retailers after I run my store. Helping out comics retailers is not going to be the first thing I do for any of my days. So the idea of it being something where I can get support from people who might have an answer when they've got time to give it to me is not necessarily how I want to approach a brand new, kind of complicated point of sale system. So the support system wasn't necessarily what I needed, and I thought how it was doing things was in a way that I didn't feel was the most polished I've ever seen.
And realistically, the very first invoice we tried to pull down,
it just wasn't working. We were having too many roadblocks, and some of the stuff I wanted it to do when I would talk to other people who use Comic Hub, and even when I talked to Stu, was basically it just doesn't do that right now. And it's like, well, that's why I have Comic Hub, is because I needed it to do that. And it can't do that, and that means that it's kind of not worth it for me to put in all this effort for the rest of Comic Hub. So in general, I didn't have that great of an experience with it. It's totally subjective. I'm not saying anything necessarily about what Comic Hub is as a platform, and the stores that are using it and seeing success with it, I understand why they are. For me, I didn't, so I don't really plan on using it. Then, that was the first few days of the week with Comic Hub, and then all of a sudden,
Comic Hub stopped being that
and became a completely different thing in the comics industry. When I had emailed Stu to say, Stu, thank you so much for your help, I don't think we're going to move forward with Comic Hub, I was given an email that basically said, there's a huge announcement we're going to be making. It's going to change a lot of these things. It's a mistake to get rid of Comic Hub now. And I didn't really respond to that because I didn't.
You didn't know what was happening.
I didn't know what was happening.
Yeah,
And I'm not
what
gonna,
can you say other than, I guess we'll wait?
Yeah, which I didn't want to wait because I don't know what I'm gambling on. The next day it was announced that Comic Hub had a plan to create a kind of digital-first economy for comic shops, where with stores shuttered and distributors non-operational and publishers not printing and publishing new comic books, one option was that comics publishers could continue to release digital comics. Stores could basically sell a digital comic for full cover price. So a $3.99 Batman comic is a $3.99 Batman digital comic. And then when the print comic eventually released, that would be free to consumers. So if you're someone who wanted to read Batman, and there's no way to read Batman right now, you could buy your Batman comic from a participating
Comic Hub store.
Comic Hub retail location, read Batman right now, and then when that Batman comic eventually gets published in print, weeks or months later, you would just be handed to you free when you go to the store. I'm using Batman as an example because literally no publishers were announced with this. This was just a framework for how it could work. And what was put out there was kind of a pitch deck of, here's the things that Comic Hub would need to do to be able to support this, and then here's how publishers and retailers would work together to make it happen. It was big on talk and light on details. Specifically, what publishers are doing this. While there were dates of like, this is going to start happening April 8th, it was never with any mix of like, who's doing it? Everybody? And a lot of the hope was built around, again, Marvel and DC. If Marvel and DC aren't participating in an initiative, it might as well not even happen. There had been other digital comics initiatives for comic shops that failed because Marvel and DC didn't participate. Diamond had a thing where you could basically like
You could sell the codes.
You could sell a digital code for an additional $1, I think, if people bought the print comic from your store. But it's like Marvel wasn't doing it, so it's like, well, it might as well not even happen then, because most of the print comics you're selling are Marvel comics. Marvel accounts for like almost half the market. If they're not doing it, it might as well not exist. So Marvel came out and said, we're not doing it. So right there it was like, well, this is dead in the water then. And then Diamond came out and said, this is not a thing we're doing either. So a lot of the logistics of...
To be fair, Comic Hub never said Diamond was part of it.
No.
And it felt that there was definitely a independent distribution that would be happening for the physical copies.
Right. But that, again, made it kind of questionable of, like, how does this work? How do the books get to the stores at some point, and at which point, and how much of them? Like, some of the concerns retailers had were that, is this going to be something where I'm getting 3 months worth of product in 1 week? Like, I'm just giving these books out because I already got the money weeks ago. Like, how does this work? For cash flow reasons, like, we don't love the idea of getting the money now and then having to pay for the product later.
You would pay for the product that week.
Was that?
Yeah, the orders. Once the orders come in, you would immediately pay the publishers.
Okay.
That was part of it.
And then but then the books would just come in whenever?
Well, once you pay for the shipping for the...
Okay.
I assume...
And again, this is just, how are they getting shipped out? Like, DC
From where is the point? I assume
right,
it's a separate account is set up for that.
Well, and again, this is kind of the logistical issue is there are books coming off a printer. How are they going to then get to stores? Like, the printer is not set up to individually pack and ship 40 copies of Detective Comics or whatever to get to an account. That's what Diamond exists for. And if Diamond's like, we're not doing it, how, when, where?
I had we didn't ask anybody this. This is speculation, but I'm assuming that it either there's like a new account set up, like, oh, here's a new Diamond account specifically for these books. Like, you know, here's the Comic Hub account, and the books get sent to a central location, and then somebody there splits them up and sends them out.
I mean, that sounds like a lot of work.
Sure,
but I mean, is not a small thing.
And I'm sure I could be completely wrong.
Sure. And the other situation was...
My point is, they had a system.
Okay.
We didn't know what it was.
Right, but that's the thing. Like, a lot of the things that are being talked about, it was something that seemed like it was moving very fast because it needed to give some solution to shops that don't have any money coming in, but the details of it, I didn't know what was happening yet. So for people who are asking us, like, are you going to participate in this? I don't know what it is yet. I wasn't going to say no.
Well, we were already technically participating.
Yeah, I mean, this wasn't a thing that was going to get me to keep using Comic Hub as a point-of-sale system and as a solution for subscription management and online sales. No, we were not going to keep using Comic Hub. But would we continue to participate to do the digital comic stuff? Like, people were already asking us. Subscribers were asking us if we were going to do it. But there was nothing to say yes to yet. But I wasn't going to say no just out of hand. The other concern that a lot of retailers had was any sort of drift into digital is not something a lot of stores are in favor of. I'm personally not a big fan of it. I think once you start doing that, once you as a retailer start pushing digital as a solution in your store, you're undercutting what your store can do. Like, once people, I don't think we're going to talk about this at length, but there's places that are trying to become a direct-to-consumer distributor that leverages independent bookstores, where a bookstore doesn't pack and ship the order that you do. The distributor does.
Right. You just get a portion of that sale.
You get 30% of that sale. And it's like, once you start doing that, once you're saying as a store that has a physical location that sells physical things to people by walking in the door, please start shopping online.
You've made it too easy for them to not come back through your doors.
Why would they ever stop shopping online? And at that point, why even shop with you? If they're just shopping online, the whole, like, they're supporting you thing becomes more and more of a distant memory as the weeks go on. So the idea of this is a short-term thing could very quickly become a long-term thing. And I don't love the idea of again, like, pitching digital as a physical location's answer to this problem.
To give us a practical example, when Comixology had the program where you could buy your digital comics from comic shops online, and we had a portal, and we had subscribers who moved away or just preferred digital, we would get a portion of their sales of their purchases every month. Yeah. And in the beginning, we were getting some very nice bonuses each month, but over time, I mean, it was the same dedicated people who were doing it regularly.
Yeah, because we didn't really push it for all these reasons. Like, this is something we learned over time. Like, our policy was not never digital. Like, we've experimented with it and found what we liked and disliked, and this is why we're the way we are now.
But it was only a handful of people always doing it, and when one of those people stops buying, that money becomes a lot less.
Also, eventually a bunch of it was just people who would only shop sales. So the percentage that you get is, like, it's not 15% or whatever of a $4 comic book. It's 15% of whatever was on sale for $1 that week. So even if they buy a bunch of stuff, you're only getting like $3 or $4. Like, it's not a lot.
It definitely trickled down over time, but I also did appreciate getting it for doing nothing.
And that's the thing,
except for existing and giving these people the kind of service when they were able to shop in the store that they wanted to still shop in the store, in air quotes.
But a lot of these solutions are just that. They're just better than nothing. Yeah. And I think for us, like, what we're doing right now, we're hustling a lot, but I think we're still trying to put together some sense of, like, physical service to what we're doing. Whether that's packing and shipping,
there's
whether
still
that's
interaction, there's
delivery, whether that's dropping off at the Chicago Board Game Cafe, we are involved in the process, you know?
Yeah, and I think that is as you pointed out to me earlier this week, that's an important reason to keep doing all the options of what we're doing. Yeah. Even if it's not us hand-delivering the books, right? It's still, you are getting your books clean hands, packaged at Challengers by one of us, mainly you, and then sent on their way.
So the Comic Hub thing then, you know, retailers were concerned. Marvel had said they weren't doing it. Diamond said they weren't involved, and then it kind of all came apart. I wasn't privy to a lot of the retailer feedback that was going on Facebook.
I was. It was blood in the water, man. Retailers were vicious.
It sounded like it was kind of not
at the end of the day, you had a group of people who love comics and love the comics industry and banded together to present a solution. It wasn't a perfect solution, but I don't hear anybody else coming up with something.
Yeah, I know. I'd read, I think, a couple things on different sites where people were sort of ascribing some motivations to this that
Even
I don't think were
some of the
fair.
normal comic news sites had a tone in the way they reported it.
Well, I just mean I think some retailers were using this as, that this was not just a bad idea, but it was something that was like that had an ulterior motive to it. And I don't think that's Stu Colson. I've met Stu. I've talked to Stu. I think Stu genuinely he wants to support the comics retail community, and he was only doing this. And this, again, from what's been kind of leaked out a little bit, this was not something that just got thrown together in a couple of days. This is something that had been maybe a longer period of work put in. This is something he was doing because he honestly thought it was going to help. It may have not been something that retailers wanted, and it may be something that had negative consequences he couldn't have predicted. But in general, I think he honest to God had his heart in the right place, and I think that's why he did it. And I think if nothing else, he deserves respect from people for trying to come up with something that could be a solution for comic shops worldwide. This isn't something he was just doing for himself to keep his stores going. This is something he was trying to do for comic shops all over. And I hope, I'm sure they didn't, but I hope people who were negatively commenting on this had that in mind.
Yeah, I think the idea of Comic Hub as a point-of-sale system grew out of the fact that he wrote it and created it for his store, and then said, hey, I wonder if other people would find value in this.
Right.
Whereas this iteration was the other way around, where he thought, how can I help everybody?
Yeah. Again, I don't necessarily agree with it, and I don't know that I understood a lot of the specifics of it beyond some very optimistic estimations. But in general, he was trying to help, and it didn't work. So that's
he
not
did more than we did.
He did. It's true. But yeah, that's. I think it's been the week so far.
And what a week it's been!
It's been a week.
My goodness.
Man, oh man.
Only 3.5 more weeks of this so far.
At least.
So far. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe things will be clearer and less spinny. Who knows?
Maybe.
We can only hope. Remember, you can still get product from us. We've mentioned it a few times in this episode. We will never stop mentioning it on this podcast or online. You can browse our graphic novel inventory via PDFs.
Got to update them after this.
On our website, you can get your books shipped to you. We only charge you USPS rates. We're not charging handling fees.
Yeah, we ship priority mail, which means if you live within Chicago, you're pretty much one day from getting it once we pack it up and drop it off at the post office.
Yeah, we're not waiting for the postal people to come by anymore either.
They're not coming by.
We're making virtually daily trips.
Yeah.
I said virtually, I don't mean like online. I mean just about every single day.
Nearly every day we're at the post office dropping off boxes of envelopes and other boxes. We also are going to be doing once a week deliveries to people within our delivery radius, which is a few miles from the Challenger store in Bucktown. If you live within a few miles of the store and want your books delivered on Wednesdays, which is our delivery day, shoot us an email. We'll work it out with you if we can. It's only $5, which just defrays gas. And then we're also doing drop-offs Tuesdays through Saturday at the Chicago Board Game Cafe. That is a restaurant that is just around the corner from the Challengers Comics in Bucktown. It's located on Milwaukee Avenue near Western Avenue. They're open from 4 to 7, Tuesday through Saturday. We drop books off there almost every day at 4 o'clock, and you can go pick them up. We notify you when they're available for pickup while you're there. You can get some food, you can get some games. I think it's a pretty good stop for people to make if they want to.
Yeah, I think so. And we've heard nothing but nice things about the people that work there from people that have picked up there.
Which is great. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, we've had so far, I'm going to knock on this table. We have not had any delivery mishaps or pickup mishaps.
Sure. We did have a slight hiccup with the delivery stuff where I've had this problem as I've been dropping off books for people since it's contactless delivery for the most part. When we drop off, it's kind of, I'll ring a doorbell or a buzzer and hope somebody comes out and gets their books. But oftentimes the information we get from people for delivery doesn't include all the information we need, like what unit are you?
Or if your name isn't on a buzzer.
Yeah, or if, like, buildings in Chicago can be weird, where it's like, oh, there's a front door, but that's not where that person's apartment is. They're around the back.
Yeah, so people have been saying things like, oh, use the side door. Great.
Yeah. Throw it over the fence.
We had, let's throw it over the fence.
Yeah.
I think Raphael, A, did a great job,
I think
and
so too.
B, in that one specific instance, he had a great solution.
Yeah, I told him I wish I'd been, had enough forethought to take photos of every place I dropped off at, just in case people were like, where's my books?
Yeah, right.
I just left them. And again, you'd ring doorbells, and we emailed when we were on the way to say, hey, the books are going to be showing up. But, I mean, that window was 2 or 3 hours from when we emailed to when we were all done.
But also recognizing, like, oh, the address says this. Mm-hmm. The front of the house is on that street. I'm going to put it toward... I thought he did a good job.
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully,
he used his head bone.
We'll keep having no problems with that. I hope.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what we're going to be doing for the next month. So if you do have subscriptions with us that you want to get shipped out, email us. We'll work it out. If you aren't a subscriber but want to get books,
you can
held for pickup at the Chicago Board Game Cafe, delivered within our radius once a week on Wednesdays, or shipped out nationwide. Shoot us an email, challengers@challengerscomics.com. We will work with you to get you comics.
So thanks for supporting us during this time, and thanks for evaluating your reading lists and realizing where the holes are that you need to fill, and thanks for letting us fill them. And also, but not least, thanks for listening.
And keep reading comics while you stay safe.
Wash your hands right now.
Everyone should have been washing their hands for this entire podcast. That's what I was told by somebody, was that the length of your hand washing should be an episode of Contest of Challengers.
I have to go wash my hands.
This has been Contest of Challengers. Thanks for listening. Keep reading comics. Challengers is located at 1845 Northwestern Avenue in the Bucktown neighborhood of Chicago. 773-278-0155.
And in the River North neighborhood of Chicago at 750 North Franklin Street, number 103, 312-285-2252.
Keep up to date with new releases and events at challengerscomics.com. Like Challengers Comics on Facebook, follow @Challengers on Twitter, and help fund this podcast at patreon.com/challengers.